All right, let's dive into what's probably the most important book on investing ever written. We're talking about Benjamin Graham's masterpiece, The Intelligent Investor. And look, you don't have to just take my word for it. Warren Buffett, Graham's most famous student and one of the best investors, period, he called this by far the best book on investing ever written. I mean, endorsements don't get much stronger than that, right? So what's the big secret here? What did Graham figure out? Well, it's not about having a stratospheric IQ or some kind of secret formula. It's actually much simpler. He says you just need two things: a solid framework for making decisions, and, maybe even more important, the discipline to stop your emotions from completely wrecking that framework. Okay, so to help us get a handle on this whole keeping our emotions in check thing, Graham gives us this brilliant little story. He wants you to picture a business partner, a really, really weird business partner he calls Mr. Market. So here's the deal. Imagine you own a piece of a business, right? And your partner is his guy, Mr. Market. And to put it mildly, he's totally bipolar. Every single day without fail, he shows up and offers to either buy you out or sell you his stake. But here's the catch. The price he quotes has absolutely nothing to do with the real value of the business. It's based entirely on how he feels that morning. One day he's on top of the world, the next he's a complete wreck. And his offers can be complete and utter gibberish. Let's look at a real-world example from the dot-com bubble. In March of 2000, Mr. Market is feeling euphoric, and he offers you $2,600 for a single share. Okay, fast forward just 1 year later, and now he's in a full-blown panic. He's offering you just $500 for the exact same share. And the craziest part of all this, the company's profits actually grew by 20% during that time. It makes no sense. So here's the key takeaway. You don't have to listen to him. You're under zero obligation to trade with this guy. Remember, a stock isn't just a number on a screen. It's a piece of a real business. Your job is to completely ignore his daily mood swings and instead use them to your advantage. When he's ridiculously optimistic and offering you a silly price, you sell. And when he's panicking and offering you a fire sale, you buy. So Graham says this leaves you with two different paths to choose from. First, you've got the defensive or passive investor. This is for people who just want safety and freedom from all the hassle and constant decisions. Then there's the enterprising or active investor. This is someone who's actually willing to put in the time and the serious effort to try and beat the market. And Graham is super clear about this. For most of us, that defensive path is probably the right choice. Okay, so let's crack open the playbook for that defensive investor. What does it actually look like? Well, it's a very clear rules-based system designed to be simple and, most importantly, safe. Graham lays out this really strict checklist. First up, you need to be diversified. Think 10 to 30 different stocks. And not just any stocks. They have to be large, stable companies with rock-solid finances. He also demands a long track record of success. We're talking things like 20 years of paying dividends without a break and no losses for at least a decade. And finally, the heart of the whole thing, you cannot, under any circumstances, overpay. And he gives us some very specific rules for that. So when he says financially strong, he's not messing around. For example, one of his rules is that a company has to have at least double the short-term assets as it has short-term debts. It's a really simple check, but it builds in this huge buffer just in case things go wrong. And here's another one of those hard and fast rules, this time to make sure you don't overpay. He says the price you pay for a stock should be no more than 15 times what the company earned in the last year. That's it. It's a simple little rule that acts like a guardrail, stopping you from getting swept up in the hype and buying at a ridiculous price. All right, so what about that other path, the enterprising investor? This is for the person who's ready to roll up their sleeves and hunt for those amazing deals. But Graham issues a huge warning here. This path is way, way harder and more mentally draining than most people think. And it's so easy to get swept up in the craziness of the market, even for the pros. Just listen to this quote. This is from a real mutual fund strategist right at the peak of the dot-com bubble. He's literally saying that higher prices don't make the market riskier. Graham's whole philosophy would just scream at this. Of course it's riskier when prices are higher. So where does the enterprising investor find their edge then? Well, it's not by chasing the hot new thing. Not at all. It's about doing the hard, detective work to find good companies that are just unpopular for some reason. They're being ignored or hated on by Mr. Market. And that means you have to deliberately avoid those exciting, glamorous growth stocks that everyone's buzzing about. Graham was convinced their sky-high prices were pure speculation, not real value, which actually made them incredibly risky. And this brings us to the core of everything.
to what Graham calls the three most important words in investing. This is the one idea that protects everyone, whether you're defensive or enterprising. It's called the margin of safety.
Here's a simple way to think about it. Imagine you're building a bridge. If the bridge needs to hold 10,000 pounds, you don't design it to hold exactly 10,000 pounds. No way. You build it to hold 30,000 pounds. That massive buffer, that extra capacity, that's your margin of safety. It's there for the unexpected.
So in the world of investing, it's the exact same idea. Your margin of safety is the gap, the discount, between the price you actually pay for a stock and what you've calculated its real intrinsic value to be. That gap is your cushion. It protects you from bad luck, from crazy market swings, and, let's be honest, from your own mistakes.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting, because this idea completely flips what most people think about risk and reward. To really get it, let's use another little thought experiment. Picture this. It's 4 a.m. You're in some sketchy bar, and a guy comes up to you with a proposition. He offers you a game of Russian roulette. He says, I'll give you $10,000 if you pull the trigger once, or I'll give you $100,000 if you pull it twice. Now, this perfectly represents the traditional thinking, right? You want a bigger reward, you have to take a bigger risk. It kind of makes sense on the surface.
But Graham says, no, intelligent investing isn't Russian roulette. It's the complete opposite. Think about it. If you can buy $1 worth of a business for 60 cents, your risk is pretty low and your potential reward is good. But what if you could buy that same dollar for just 40 cents? Well, now your potential reward is even better, but your risk is actually lower. And that's the whole magic of it. In smart investing, the cheaper the price, the higher your potential return, and the lower your risk.
Which brings us to the final question, and it's a big one. You know, Graham wrote this book a long, long time ago. So you have to ask yourself, in today's world where that bipolar Mr. Market is basically screaming at us from our phones 24/7, are these core ideas, controlling your emotions, thinking like a business owner, and always, always demanding a margin of safety, are they maybe more important now than they have ever been?